Hello devs, welcome to Orinda's tutorial. Today we're going to talk about uh, building a custom CI pipeline locally. So CI/CD pipeline with Docker and custom GitHub Actions locally without running in the cloud. So what I'm expecting you to be having knowledge of, at least you have a bit of knowledge of Docker, a bit of Linux commands, and you've interacted with GitHub Actions, or if you haven't, then you'll learn today. Then, so we'll also be learning about SSH, accessing a virtual machine via SSH. So we'll be setting up a virtual machine in a virtual box. Then we'll be deploying that will be acting as our cloud provider. We'll see how we do port forwarding of these IPs, so that whatever port will be exposed within the Docker container in the VM can be accessed via the host. So right away, let me just show you how this will work. So here I have a setup already with a list of things. So we have a Docker file. This is just a simple Docker file that will grab a node image from Docker Hub. Then we'll just need to deploy this. We have a Docker Compose. This will just make our lives easier. I'll just be running Docker Compose up to build the image for us. So we have this deploy script. What happens here, I was intending to use gulp, but it's more of technical, so I'll just be using default, the normal shell.js package. So what happens here is we'll set up this path. So here we have the public and private key already set up, the public key and the private. So then we also have our application. Here is where it's located. It's just a simple upload. It will be able to upload a zip or upload an image. Then we'll be able to see that. So we have this upload setup. This one should be notable to anyone who has already coded JavaScript. Big takeaway here is we won't be focusing more on the code, rather we'll be focusing more on the pipeline and the VM. So just to get started, I have here Insomnia, and you can see we can't access 4030. 4030. If we send a test, you can see it's closed. If we try 5001, it's also closed. And if we run npm, I will see we are listening on port 5001, and if we send a request, we should get this hello world. So that tells us that this application is running. So this is just the paths that are set up so that I know which paths I'm working with. They will be very necessary when we'll be working with these keys. So from there, we can just close this. So what will happen is we have this VM running currently, and I already have set up some SSH tunneling here. So if I try to SSH into the local VM, I'll be able to get access here. So you can see Docker ps. So then you'll see there's no currently any container which is running here. So then what we need to do is to come here and we run docker let me just switch up my input. So so what we need to run docker ps, and you'll see I have so this is on my host machine, but in the VM we have no container running. So the point of this is that we'll be able to deploy this. So one, we just need to run yarn or npm run deploy local. So this should be able to go and deploy our application locally in the VM, and you can see it's running these ones. You can see we have some of these logs here. So we are currently pulling these images of Node Slim. So we haven't set any persistent layer on this, that's why you'll see every time it will be pulling these images. But for this pull, once this is done, we'll have something. So the reason why I'm using Node Slim is because it's a bit lightweight. So then that image should now be up. Okay, yeah, now our container is up and running. So if we come back here to docker ps, we should be able to see our container is running, but our exposed port is 4300 while locally. So we can just run a curl http localhost maybe 5001. Okay, so we have 4300. Yep. So you can see we have it's listening on port 4300, and we have exposed 501. Okay, so 4300. Is it 4030 or 4300? 4030. So what happens is in the Docker VM, in the VM it's running on port 5000, but locally in our host machine it's exposed on port 4300. So but you can see we are able to get a response from our server. So let's start all this from beginning, so that you know what's really going on here. So I won't be writing most of these things, so I'll just give you an explanation of what I've done here. If you want me to see me code this, we can go through that. So let's go in the VM setup. So in the VM, let me just remove this. So when you're working with the VM, you'll be presented with this kind of layout. Okay, so you'll click on new. So you'll click on new here. Then I can just write Ubuntu. Then you'll see it selects Ubuntu 64-bit. So whenever you want to create a VM, you need to head over to Google. So then I will get Ubuntu server, go to download page, then you click on download Ubuntu server. With me, I have this already installed. I have it already in my local machine, so I won't need to re-download it. It will take some time to download. So once that is installed, you need to make sure you have VirtualBox. So VirtualBox also can be downloaded from these outlets. So VirtualBox, this is where now we'll be running our hypervisor, and based on your OS, there are many ways of installing these. Windows is quite straightforward. If you're working with Linux, as I am working with Ubuntu, you can install it from the command line. So that's said and done. You'll need to come and create a new OS. So just click next. I'll leave the default allocation. Click next. Create. Then I'll just leave it as the default. Next. Dynamically allocated. Next. Then I'll just click on create. Once that's created, this is another version of Ubuntu that I want to install. So next thing I need to do is to come here to this, then click on settings. Once it's selected, click on settings. So after you've clicked on settings, we'll need to manage a few things here. So come here to system, come to network. Before network, let's go to system, enable networking, so that you're able to connect your system across. If in case you have internet, then your internet can be tunneled to your VM. User interface, that's not so much necessary because we'll be using the CLI. Serial ports, not so much. So then come to storage. I will click on this controller IDE. Then on the empty, click on the empty, and it will give you this optical drive. Click on this small disk section. Then it will give you a point where now you'll be pointing your disk image from where it's supposed to be installing. This is like your live drive or the Ubuntu disk ISO. So because I had already installed, you can see it's listed here. If it's not listed, then I can just go choose from disk, and you can see I have variety. I can choose Kali or CentOS. Open. So then once that's selected, come to display, system, and general. All is good here. So then I'll just click on OK. Then once that is done, you'll just click on start. When you click on start, it will give you a prompt on whether to install. So this is CentOS. I'll just close this because it will take some time. So I'll just close that because I have something already working. This one is already running. I'll work with this one. So number one, if if you want to connect to this server, because for me I started it virtually. Let's just see. So I started it in headless mode. Let me just power it off and boot it up again. When you come here, there's option for normal start, which will start up the GUI, headless start, which will start it in like CLI mode, so you won't have the GUI, but you'll have a preview of it here. I haven't done the detachable, so we'll start it in headless start. So that will try to boot your OS. Okay, so once it's booted, you can come to your, so connection is already closed because we had shut down the server. So then what I can do from here, from my terminal, I can just try to SSH. So the reference here is your username. So the username used for creating your VM is the one you'll be using to log in. So my name was Orinda at localhost. So then you'll see we can't access it via port 2200. Okay, so then we need to come back to our VirtualBox because this is already working. We'll come to settings, then select, come to networking, click on advanced, then click on port forwarding. So this is the point where you are sharing port between your host OS and the VirtualBox. So what happens here is rule number one, what I've said here, if I'm going to connect to my VirtualBox on port 2000 SSH 22, which is the default SSH port, then I'll be tunneling it to 3309 on my host machine. If I'm going to be accessing a port in the VM, which is 4300, I'll be accessing it in the port 4300 in my host machine. So once that is done, you just click on OK, then click on OK here. Back here, I will SSH into that, then I'll specify port to be 3309. Then you'll see it will prompt me for my password. I'll enter the password and you can see I am in the VM already. So this is not so much handy because every time you need to enter your password here and there. So that's why we set up SSH. So if you don't know how to set up SSH, I have a link in the description on the previous version of where I was setting up SSH. So I'll be showing you how to connect your application to your local setup and this SSH server. So what will happen is, let's say we're in this folder. So just a demonstration of what we are having here. We have this keys folder which has our private key. So these keys are generated. You can just use the SSH key gen command. Then I'll just rename them to maybe private. Then select default and you'll see we have a private key here and a public key here. So what happens, assuming this is your server, your local host, the host machine is your local server, assuming it's GitHub and you push your code to GitHub. Once you build it, you push it to GitHub. Once you push it to GitHub, you need to set up a connection between GitHub and your, whether it's AWS, GCP or Azure, or whichever place you want to deploy, or you're just a VM, which may be, or a droplet living in DigitalOcean, you'll need to set up a public key and a private key for the contact, because when you're deploying in the cloud services, you're not supposed to be using password authentication for security reasons. So the private key is usually lives in the host machine. So here we have GitHub is our host machine, and currently we are acting as GitHub where our code is living. So we'll retain the public key, but the private will retain the private key and will share the public key. So what happens, I already have these keys set up here. So what happens, I'll just copy all of these keys, this key. Because I've logged into the VM, I'll go to cd.ssh in the VM. There should be this file known as authorized keys. If it's not there, you need to create it. So if I just cut authorized keys, then you'll see we have a list of values in here. So we can just edit it, authorized keys. Then you'll see we have this list. We can also add the one we have copied from local, and we add it here. So once this is added, we can use the same key to access our server. So let me just terminate this without that. So the way we can write SSH add private. Okay, so that's we add that identity. Then now we can try to SSH -I, let's say Orinda at localhost -p3309. So I represent the identity file. Okay, so what we need to add here is the location. So it's our private key. Okay, then you can see it's still prompting us for the password. So then you can see we are able to log in. So then the reason why it's prompting us for the password is because we haven't set up that key in the server. So if we just come and add it here, paste, save and exit. If we come back again and use exit, if we use the same command, then you'll see it logs us directly into the server without requesting for the password. So that's the necessity of using SSH. So you add your public key to the target machine, then it will be able to log you into that machine automatically. So what happens with this CI/CD pipelines, that's how we do the authentication. So back to code, I have this so-called paths folder. What this paths folder does is we just need to figure out where our root folder is located. So then we set up, we know our keys path, src path, base path, and applause path. So we use this library known as find root, which will find the closest package.json. So because we know package.json is usually at the root of our project, then it makes it easy to know at what point our root folder is located. Reason for this, if you're using TypeScript, usually when you build, you build into this folder, and you may map out a different folder structure, then you miss out on a folder if you're doing relative path. So this will give us the absolute path of the system. So once we set up these paths, then now coming back to uploader, this is just a simple Malta setup that you'll see we have this uploads path from the paths that we had already set up. Just doing file naming and setting up a filter for image and a zip. Then we set up custom uploaders based on different filters. So that is, I guess, is self-explanatory. If you need more on image upload, I can do a video on that, so you can share in the comment section. So then we have this index file. So index file is like the one now express wrapper. It is the one which will now be loading our application and running everything. So this will just be for uploading the file and testing whether it's working correctly. If an endpoint is not mapped, then we'll just send a status of 405, that method not allowed. So then this is now just like where your business logic is going to lie. So the meat of all this is this deploy file. We could have used gulp, but it's a bit complicated a bit. If so, you can see we'll install this shell.js module. This shell.js module is one we use for running shell commands in our terminal or programmatically. It's cross-platform. So let's break this down. So we get our paths from the initial paths, and you can see we get keys path. So keys path, now this is now the point where our keys are located, this one. So where we're going to get our private key. So this private key will be necessary when you're authenticating with the public key, which is registered in the authorized keys in the VM. So source path, now this will now be the path that maps our folder from where we'll be doing the copy to the destination in the VM. So you can see we resolve the base path. So this base path, in the paths here, base paths is now the root. Okay, the root of our project. So then the destination path will be in the VM, but we'll be going in the current user that we are logged in with. We'll be going to apps, then we get the base name of source path. So base name, what it will do, it will strip off every other thing and give us just the name of the folder. So that's why we are using that base name. Then we return, this is just a function to get required config. We return the private, public, source path, SSH port, which you had already shown on the port forwarding. Destination, user used Orinda, that's my username in the VM, and the host is localhost. So we just have this simple function known as deploy code. So we destructure from the get config, we get our configurations. I'll just need to explain a bit here. So first, as you saw initially, there's a similarity here. We SSH, we specify the file, which is our private key. Then we specify the port. Then here we don't check much on the key. Then you can see we specify our user at host. Then we run a command, make folder the destination path. The destination path will be this one. Okay, so once we set up, we create that folder. So then we need, after creating that folder, then we need to run an rsync. Okay, so rsync is just a command line utility for copying files from one point to another. You can copy from local to online, from online to local, but it's usually very convenient. So what happens, that these flags we're going to use, I don't know about Z, but rsync A will be more of returning more of the symbolic links. V will be more of a boss. It should be printing to us whatever is happening. Then we execute in this. So we SSH again using this. Then we exclude Git and node modules. So we copy the source path to the host, which is the VM, to the destination, which is provided here. Once that is done, cd into that directory, and we need to run docker compose app build. So what this will do, every file will be copied from here. After being copied from here, it will be pushed to our VM. So let me just show you how this will work. If I go to my local, you can see we have apps, cd apps ls. So you can see we have node uploads app. So that's why the name of this application is node uploads app. So that's why if you see we get the base name here, it will be getting the name of the folder. So if we list whatever is in there, you'll see we ls I will see we have deploy.js and all these, and you'll see okay, so we only have these ones. So if I run the deploy again, so if I run, so this is a self-executing code, so it will just call this function when we run. Then I've just registered it in the package.json to deploy local to node deploy.js. So yarn deploy local. So this will push these codes to the remote container, and you can see because we had initially created that, Docker will try to check and see, it will find the image already exists. Then this verbose printing, then after copying, you can see the new files which we've pushed are private and public. This is public, of which if we go to list again, you'll see we have private and private.pub, of which those did not exist in this. So that tells you that our GitHub action, the local GitHub action has worked, and it's able to like deploy and create the container for us. So then if now I do a test, okay, for us to do a test and see whether cd ls, we need to test and see. whether it's doing what's intended. So you can see if we go to uploads and list, we have these two files, these two images. They are being renamed on upload. So those are in the VM. I'll just come back to Postman, upload, then I'll images 4030, then choose a file. Okay, so I had some issues with this, and but you can see we have we get some response. So I don't know, just see. So you can just add a simple request here to help us get this post, so that we see whether it's working. Body should be form data, then file should be image. What was it? Image. Then now we click on select file, go to downloads, and maybe click on that, open, send. Then you can see file uploaded successfully. If we come to our server we list, you'll see we have like 3 files. So that tells you that this is working. I didn't set up a cleanup function, reason being I just needed a way to confirm that this pipeline is working, and if you upload something, it's indeed working. So that's it for today, and I'll leave a copy of the code link in the description for whoever may want to learn from the same and maybe build on top of this. So I hope you learned one or two things from this, uh, and CI/CD is not that hard. You just need to do a lot of the work, and it will just pay out on its own. So you just need to put in the work and learn these things. So uh, if you get any challenge implementing whatever we saw here, you can just reach out in the chat section so that I may try to help around in case there's something. So if you find this kind of videos intriguing or interesting, you can just give it a thumbs up, give it a like, share, and subscribe. See you in another one.